It's another episode of FPTV. I'm here with Lant Pritchett, who is a well-known economist from Harvard University who's done some pioneering work on development and poverty. I'm Blake Hounshell, the Managing Editor of Foreign Policy. And my first question for you is, do you think it's even meaningful to use the words developing country in this day and age?
Yes, I actually do. In the sense that there is a process whereby countries have gone through, they've become more prosperous, citizens have gotten better control over their polity, over the regime that rules them. States have become more capable, and states have acquired a treatment more equal of citizens. I think calling that process development is meaningful, and I think on each of those dimensions, some societies are further along than others are. So I think it is meaningful to talk about societies going through stages in which they acquire more prosperity, more better functioning polities, more capable states, and you can actually rank states by and societies by where they are on that spectrum.
Now, when you look at the world today, obviously India and China are a major story, and most of the people who have gotten out of poverty have come from those two countries. But where are you looking at and seeing a really optimistic story now?
Well, I think there's lots of optimistic stories still in Asia. Vietnam is still an optimistic story. I think one reason India and China get as much attention as they do is just they're so big. But the story about India is not entirely optimistic. I think from the Western perspective, we see a very thin veneer. I lived in India for 3 years, and the Western notion of what India is and is doing is completely just a tiny little thin veneer of what's happening in India. Many states in India have poverty rates that are still well above those of Africa, and malnutrition in India is still higher than any other country in the world. So India is far from being entirely an optimistic story, and by the same token, I think there are lots of other optimistic stories out there. They just tend to get swamped by a billion people being sort of a huge story.
So what do you think India is doing wrong?
I think one of the things that India is doing wrong is they're not developing the capability of their state to actually implement what they plan to do. So I've written a paper called India is a Flailing State. It's not a failed state like Afghanistan or even a failing state like Pakistan, but India's brains are so powerful and so capable that they manage to create the illusion that that brain's actually connected to a body. But it's no longer connected to a body. If you look at what actually happens on the ground, it has almost nothing to do with the plans and policies that the capital has conceived. So what the key missing link, I think, for India is just the sinews and muscles of actually being able to carry out their plans. So if you look at India on paper and on laws, they have great laws, great policies, because they've got lots of bright people. It's just the connection between that and what actually happens to the typical citizen in the typical village is just completely divorced, two different realities.
Would you say that's a different story in China?
I don't know enough about China to say anything.
Well, let's go to the Arab world. Do you know enough about the Arab world to comment?
Ask me something.
All right. I mean, one of the big stories of the last few years in the Arab world has just been really poor people being squeezed by rising food prices, government corruption, and incompetence.
Right.
If you were advising the economic and finance ministries of places like Tunisia and Egypt, and I guess Libya is a different story, but
Libya is a different story.
What would you want them to be doing to get out of the bad place where they are now?
I think the key issue for Egypt is for the new leaders of Egypt to signal that they can create an Islamic polity with an opportunity society. So they can combine real, competitive, vibrant capitalism with Islamic politics. If they can send that signal, they can be successful. If they can't send that signal, then they are in the very real risk of a downward spiral in which they fail to deliver on the economic promises and premises of the revolution, and it's just, it could end really ugly.
Last question is about the United States.
Okay.
And,
which I also don't know much about.
Ever since, the financial crisis in 2008, we've really either stagnated or gone backwards. Do you think that America is in permanent economic decline, or do you think we've got a core value that's going to rebound?
I think America is too disorganized to fail. And I think the fundamental lack of a strong organization or a strong driving force in the society is America's driving force. So I'm an American optimist because it's just too disorganized, too decentralized to fail for long. So I think I'm an American optimist in the long run because I'm an economist, and economists love disorganization. We love vibrancy and hate order, and one thing America is it's disordered.
We'll end on that optimistic note. Thanks so much.